Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter with myself and Mauisnake. Because just you know what, I'll even start the episode with a totally unnecessary shot at Americans speaking English, classic British sort of like refrain, which I'll just say this, which is, if there's one thing I hate in life, right, is when people are pretentious, but they can't actually back it up. So there's two examples. One is an obvious one. You all know the people at school who didn't read enough books or didn't do well in English, where they don't really know what an apostrophe does, so they use it randomly, right? That tilts me. At that point in time, just don't use it. Just don't use it if you don't want to do it. So similarly, Americans love to, right, find out that there's obviously that circumstance in which sometimes you say me and sometimes you say I, and that when they think, oh, wait, saying I is just like more fancy. So they go around saying like so-and-so and I in settings where it doesn't actually make any sense to say that whatsoever. And that's not even, and it would actually be me. And you get it completely wrong. And it does actually help me. So anyway, it is me and Mauisnake in this particular case. Because obviously I wouldn't say I in that sentence, would I? But I'm joined by, speaking of proper British, see what I did there, Mau? We've got Thomas here, haven't we? Exactly. And if people don't know, I mean, funnily enough, when I was a kid, Mauisnake, little piece of info you won't know here, my favourite TV show was a show called Thomas the Tank Engine. It was actually, as the name describes, it was about a tank engine, a train, that was called Thomas. And in many ways, I actually think Thomas in Counter-Strike plays that role, because his job is just tank all the abuse of the entire community. Like, first of all, he gets like the Carrigan abuse without getting the, you know, like the praise of having the strats. And they're just like, he's bomb fragging, get him out the team, get him out. Like, the first thing anyone says is just get him out the team. And then secondly, like, the joke is like, that's every suggested roster move, isn't it? It's like, oh, if you just sort of put someone else in his spot, though, it'd be like a really good team. So basically, it doesn't just look the part. He's playing like the UK DAPS role at this point in time, which is, even if you are actually the in-game leader doing a good job, there you go. They want you kicked so you can make some, I don't know, MDL super team, whatever the idiot fans think. By the way, but give us some insight before we start. People will know, obviously you had the major running Into the Breach. People don't know he's the in-game leader of Into the Breach. Well, obviously they were actually in the quarterfinals of the major. If you remember, they played Vitality in the quarters, and then it was Apex that played them in semis. But after that, there was a period where you were benched, right, Thomas? So what happened? Give us, what can you say publicly? Why were you out of the game for a while, and then you're back now? Is it all hands on deck? Are we going full again in Counter-Strike as a pro?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think individually, I just hit a speed bump sort of thing, and sometimes you just gotta take a step back to just reanalyze everything and maybe fix some problems that you can work on yourself. And yeah, that was pretty much it. Yeah, so some things you just gotta work on, right?
That's a bit ominous. What I love there is Maui. What he said in isolation is totally like harmless, but the just way he said that, like, something he's just going to work on, haven't you? Like those bloody rats in the team fucking bench him. I mean, yeah, no, yeah, there's a lot of things in this, you know, X's and O's, you know, getting the roles set and all that. Like, my role is the fucking boss of this team, you little rat. Anyway, yeah, so let's go for the next major, boys. I still can't, by the way, just as a random thing before we do start, right? One thing I actually did think was cool, Thomas, is when some people make like a crazy run that's never expected, and they're on some like Cinderella 4. Some people really do have the ego, even though they've never done it, to just be like, yeah, this is right, actually. I was secretly like the best all along, and you know, no one knew. What I liked actually is when you were making that run, you were actually like, man, you were basically yourself like, I didn't think we were going to even win these games. Like, how are we beating these teams? You actually kind of sort of owned it. And I noticed you even said as well, I think there's actually like a relevant point we can start talking about some of the points of the show. Dude, I thought it was quite cool that you actually did expressly say in interviews, like essentially, like, of course we're playing like loose Counter-Strike and doing like full rushes. Like, these are the best teams in the world, that we're not going to beat them in straight up aim duels. I thought that was like, essentially, it sounds like you had like quite an interesting sort of perspective on competing at the major.
Well, yeah, you know, you can't play tier 1 CS when, you know, we had a saying, when you like sort of play tier 1 teams, you can't play their style, you're just going to lose. So like, in reality, we thought we're just going to play like no respect, and we're going to play very aggressive to like ruin their tempo, and then we start playing our own game, you know. And you know, if that didn't work, you know, we're in big trouble. But you know, we were able to get the kills at the right time. You know, they started getting pretty tilted, because I think the pressure of losing to a worse team is more than anything else, you know? Yeah. Like, as soon as you start losing a couple of rounds, maybe first gun round, you know, people start getting the sweat on, and then they're like doubting themselves pretty much, like when they're doing stuff. But yeah, we just played on that, you know, that entire attitude of how to abuse the other team, sort of thing. Like we knew we were totally out of our depth, right? As soon as we entered into the legend stage. So we had to just mix it up, you know, play differently to everyone else, play way more off confidence and momentum, pretty much. So we couldn't actually we wouldn't actually just sit there and play like tier 1 CS against them. You know, you got to be a pretty big moron to do that if you're in our situation. But yeah, I guess it worked out for at least until Vitality, who won the whole thing.
No, even so, though, even against Vitality, I appreciate that you were running the very innovative strategy called utility-less wide swings, just directly into the best player in the world. And what's mad is, I'm not even joking, guys, it was actually sort of working for like the first half of the match. Like it actually, like he's talking about here, the joke is they were expecting a pop flash or someone to jiggle the cock. They actually weren't expecting just like a face it level 5, just wide swing into the guy, like fuck it, big balls play. Actually was sort of working. The joke is, by the way, that part in itself actually made it a way cooler underdog story, because I'm pretty sure it did make people who just play like face it pogs like, wait a minute, do you mean I could probably do this at the minute? I think actually some people, for a moment, it let them dream and believe actually, because you know there's that thing that like people who are semi-competitive, if you don't know, guys, always have a mad conspiracy theory that actually they're like, you know, a hair away from Nico and it's just politics that keeps them out of the scene, even though it's like, brother, we have a thing called the eye test, you know what I mean? Anyway, let's get into this episode. So Thomas, we always have the guest do the first point. So if the first category is good, what is your good point? What have you brought? What's good in Counter-Strike or the world to Thomas?
God, I don't even know. Oh God!
Like what you give me. Like pretty soon, I'll give you an example. The HLTV Top 20 was recently. Who's a player that you're feeling, or you want to celebrate, or you want to big up?
Yeah. I'm gonna big up ZywOo. That guy, he absolutely owned me, you know.
Okay.
And he will always continue to own me because that guy is a Chad.
All right.
There's nothing else you can do against him. The guy probably has wall hack in his head or something. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know. Well, we're British, like, you know, we're not so good with the positive stuff.
True.
We're really good at the negatives, you know.
Yeah, you're not even really supposed to, if you don't know, guys. If you're British, you're not even really supposed to go like he's the best. You're supposed to go as ZywOo. Yeah, he's not bad. Yeah. Pretty good, really. You know, you have to be mad understated. In fact, that's actually something I'll give people an anecdote. When I went to E-League and we're in America in like an actual like TV studio, and all the makeup women there work on stuff like inside the NBA, like all these like American TV shows. They actually weren't used to British people, right? So they kept saying like to me like, why are you guys always so sort of pessimistic? And I was like, what do you mean? All I always said was like, you know, nothing. And they said that like DDK had been in 5 minutes before me. And apparently we both did the same thing. When it was like some really lovely day, you know, with like all the sun shining in Atlanta, they were like, oh, you know, how are you doing today? And then apparently both me and DDK were just like, not bad. And then they were like, not bad, but surely you just mean good. And I was like, well, yeah, that's what that means. But then they thought we just meant like not bad, like we're in the fucking Addams family or something. So yeah, that is actually like, definitely there's a difference on that one. Right. All right, Maui, come on then. If anyone, even though people think the whole cultural impact angle means you hate ZywOo, spoiler, it's just because he has really annoying fans and the people contrasting him with simple as the GOAT. Like, it's easy to wax lyrical on fucking ZywOo, right? ZywOo's the shit.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to bring up like back to the Britishisms though. Like when I actually lived there in London, I watched the Women's World Cup game, and the one that famously, you know, the British women's team actually won the whole thing. And I was in a pub actually right near where I used to live, and
come on,
I was talking with a guy there.
Come on.
I was like, whoa, like people were like, it's coming home, and there was like kind of like a modest applause for it, and I was kind of like, don't you guys care? And he's like, would be better if it was the men's team, wouldn't it be?
There we go. I knew the punchline was coming at the end. I knew there was, I mean, by the way, I think we got off fairly lightly there, Thomas. I thought it was going to be something way more spicy.
Definitely.
Exactly. But whatever. I will just imagine, insert that in your own brain, guys, what someone might say in a London pub about that sort of, you know, let's say a potentially politically fraught situation. You could describe it as in a pub, no less, by the way, as well. By the way, I'll just throw that out there. If anyone is just getting offended by things people say in pubs. They are just in pubs drinking beer, mate. Like, it's not like the forum with like fucking Socrates and like, well, what is the nature of being? So, okay, like, give me some thoughts on ZywOo, though. Because, I mean, he has just won player of the year. Obviously, he's got this like mad streak. There's loads we can go in on. What would your angle be on him?
Yeah, of course. I mean, for the HLTV superlatives, I was on the panel for it, and I was voted for ZywOo for Sniper of the Year. It was the one category that he was in. But honestly, if you would have put him in any single category, I probably would have had to vote for him because he's the most versatile player in Counter-Strike right now. You put him in any single situation, other than IGLing, obviously. But I mean, in terms of actual gameplay, you put him into an anchor situation. Like, I've seen him, back silo on B bomb site nuke, having to defend with an A1S, and he with 15 bullets left in his magazine, he kills 3 people, which is every single shot, nailing somebody with a perfect burst. Like, with the pistols, he's just the nastiest pistol player on the planet right now. I mean, you probably would throw in like Twist and Nico with him there too, but it's that he's so good at absolutely every single thing. And that's why when I brought up the whole cultural impact angle, you kind of watch him and you're like, he's just good at everything. Like, he doesn't have that characteristic flaw. Like, sometimes, like Kenny S would even just get a little too crazy for himself, or like even Simple himself would just jump into some fight that's just unwinnable, and you're like, that's a little bit ridiculous, but it's Simple, it's Kenny, whatever. And then, but ZywOo, it's like, oh, he's a lot more measured, he's a lot more tempered, he's gonna make the right play a lot of the time, he's gonna make the winning play, and it's obvious. Honestly, sometimes it's somebody's flaws that make them an idiosyncratic player. Like, it's that if he's doing everything right and he looks like he has wall hacks all the time, and he's just like, no, I don't want to do that, or I will do that, and I'm gonna do it to the best of my ability, and that's better than anybody else in the world. That's when it starts to become, okay, well, does this guy have any flaws at all? Because usually adversity and flaws are what people have to overcome to make them great. But it just feels like as soon as ZywOo hit the ground, he was running at full speed and nothing ever slowed him down.
Okay.
Definitely had over time, didn't he? He just always hit the ground running. I remember playing him when he was in AAA, and he was, I think the main difference is his teammates just got so much better. Like, when he jumped up into Vitality, he was just instantly playing with, top players. And he didn't change in the regard of, like, the way he played from AAA to Vitality, I would say, instantly. But he was still playing with, like, he was just trusting himself. I don't know. Maybe he can, like, do some lessons for people, I'll be up for it.
The sad thing is, though, mate, here's the problem. Because there are all those stories where supposedly he doesn't, like, grind the game in the same way that people like Simple do, and also you can see he's fairly quiet, you just know that the lessons from him would be, like, mad depressing, because it'd all just sort of be like, and then you just go, here, you shoot 3 of them. You're like, but how do I do it? Yeah, you just shoot them, put the cursor, you come out, you shoot him in the head, next one, you get him too, like, and then you're just sat there like, no, this hasn't helped at all. In fact, now I actually feel worse about my game, if anything. Like, apparently it's just easy for him to do it. Brilliant. So all I'll say is this, I'll actually intentionally not say anything even jokingly negative about ZywOo for one segment, whatever. If no one's seen, by the way, check out the latest video on my YouTube channel, because I have a straight fire ident where Apex just introduces me as the number 1 ZywOo hater in the world, which is straight fire when the actual in-game leader of his team is doing that. So I appreciate that. So all I'll say is this, I will give credit to ZywOo. I actually know what you mean on that one, which is he actually obviously entered loads last year as well, and obviously rifles and up. So the joke is, remember back in the day, that classic question, like, what one player could, like, could you clone and they could play like as a real team? Well, the problem in the past was, obviously the IGL one ruins it for most players, because, like, for example, people like Kenny S couldn't be an IGL, obviously. But even so, it actually, most stars wouldn't work in sort of like the entry and support roles, for example, or most stars, like, for example, wouldn't want to play an anchor role on CT side. The joke is, I used to always say people like Shocks or Nico, probably the closest you can come if you think like their skill set. Dude, ZywOo's just the obvious answer. Think about it, right? He could actually be like an entry player. He could be the anchor. He's your closer, wins all the clutches. He's the AWPer. He can just be a straight up normal rifle player. Like, what doesn't he do? Like, the joke is, except for IGL, and the spoiler on that one is he just never tried. Like, for all we know, maybe years from now, he actually becomes more of a vocal social. He's already, by the way, leveled that up like a motherfucker. Imagine him doing that speech when he first came in the scene, that he just did it like HLTV. Like, he looked mad comfortable. So, no, this guy actually has, he's the complete package. Like, I'll just say this. I can't think of a single thing, by the way, that I dislike about ZywOo. I think there's nothing negative about his game or his quality. It's actually why I find it a bit sad that essentially I do think a lot of the animosity and hostility against him is just because he has a really annoying fan base that's very vocal, and then that people can't help, even his biggest supporters, constantly contrasting him with fucking Simple. Like, the joke is everyone looks bad compared to Simple. Like, if we only talk about Nico compared to Simple, it's going to sound like we're just listing all Nico's flaws, even though, by the way, I think Nico's like probably one of the 5 best people to play any version of Counter-Strike ever in human history. Like, he's just fucking bonkers, isn't he? But he's not Simple. So, I think that's pretty good. Right, let's go on then, Maui. Let's keep the pace up a bit. What is your good point for this one?
Yeah, I've been keeping a really close eye on the open qualifiers that are happening right now for the RMR, and I feel the one guy that kind of shocked me and I had no idea how good he was going to be. I kind of heard rumblings before is a guy that's on OG, which is a team that we're always struggling to find really strong storylines for, but I've actually really liked HeavyGod on this roster. HeavyGod has been such a monster for them. I know that he came from Endpoint before, now on OG. These are his first officials that he's playing with OG. And this guy has been just lights out as a rifler. I've been really impressed with his stats are very good so far. But I want to go beyond the stats, obviously, because people are going to look at that and be like, oh, is this just like an open qualifier thing? Is he just farming some bad players or anything like that? No, he's playing teams that are like, well ingrained in the tier 2 circuit, like Ecstatic, Permita, Anonymous, Nexus, and he's battering most of them. And the thing is, when I watch him play, and for people that haven't seen him, what's really exciting about him is that, one, he almost never gets caught off guard. Like it does happen. It does happen sometimes, but he's on a brand new team. Everybody's coming together for the first time, and to still rarely get caught off guard, I feel like that's very difficult because when you're playing with a new 5-man lineup, there's going to be gaps in your defense. There's going to be gaps across the map, and usually you're just going to get flanked a little bit more, and you're just going to get shot on the side of the head a little bit more. But one thing that's crazy is that if he's ever in some kind of like anchor position, any kind of spot where he's kind of in a rotator spot or anything like that, he is just so consistently good at finding 2, sometimes even 3 frags with just pure rifle work. And he's so good at just his movement in CS2. He's so good at playing around little pieces of cover that he's able to just stay alive for so much longer than other people, so his teammates can rotate into. And I just feel like right now he's one of the guys that has just been a huge bright spot in an open qualifier that has kind of had a lot of games that are, frankly, they're sometimes lower quality in terms of teamwork.
Sure.
So you really do have to focus on individuals and who are the ones that are stepping up and going above and beyond to show that they can just win rounds single-handedly. And HeavyGod's been a guy that has put OG on his back in a lot of these games so far. And I would say personally, he's been more impressive than Regali, who I thought Regali was going to be the guy for OG as a dropper. But actually, HeavyGod to me has just been lights out. I've been so impressed with him. And it's one of the few spots on OG where I'm like, oh, they actually found somebody who I'm really, really interested in seeing how he develops in terms of the next 6 months.
I don't know this guy, Thomas. You must be familiar with this player, right?
No, I've played with HeavyGod, on Faceit and stuff, and the guy is like really well-rounded. He talks a lot. He suggests and helps teammates a lot. Like he's a very good player, and it's just crazy how many players have come through Endpoint. Like Flames, Nerds, now HeavyGod, like Boros and stuff. Like I don't know. I do think there is a aspect of like the Endpoint UK culture. Like when players come in, like I don't know what it is, man, but they just loosen up a bit, They have the banter and then they feel comfortable. Then they're like actually talking way better because they're talking English and they're enjoying it. Like HeavyGod is a completely rounded player in my opinion. I think he has like the world's his oyster at the moment. I think he's gonna have better opportunities to play against better teams now. I think he's going to build up the confidence. Like, I spoke to him last night. They lost to C9 in the best of 1, but I think they're playing them in the best of 3 coming forward. And he was saying, like, yeah, that was his first ever time playing C9, but now he's, like, mentally prepared to, like, hopefully, because he hasn't got the experience in comparison to other players, like, playing the this level of, team. So I think when he does eventually start playing in like the Blasts, I think they're a partner team, right?
For Blast,
yeah. When he starts doing that, I think he'll do great, to be honest.
What about obviously I don't have a point for this one, so I'll just go to my good point on this one, which is It's funny because I actually have had so much skepticism about these moves. It's basically, I've just written it this way, that Astralis is just filled with elite talent again. Like, obviously they have 4 of the top 20 players from the HLTV's top 20 in their list. And by the way, mainly justified. I think the only debatable ones may be Yabby. Maybe some people don't think he's on. But like, aside from that, the other 3 are all bona fide, even if fans hate on Blame F. So the reason I bring this up as my good point is, actually, it sort of took me a while to like, actually, for the impact of this actual lineup to like hit me properly. Because when I first saw it, like my first thought, like we talked about on a past episode, was like, but if you're doing the roles, haven't you got the wrong heroic players? Wouldn't you have gone with like Shush and Tessus to fit around like Devicer? So first of all, to make a classic style of team in Counter-Strike or composition, I just thought, I don't know if these are the right moves. Aren't there going to be role clashes, or someone can't be the star anymore, you know, whoever that might be? You can obviously make your own speculations. And then also there's the angle, obviously, that like Blame F remains as the IGL. They didn't keep Glaive, like no one knows yet. Will he be the IGL of a team that can actually win trophy? There's that whole thing. But then once I got past all that, because all of that, by the way, is unresolved until I see them play. I can't know if they ever did that. But I'll tell you what, once I get past all that and like turn off just the analytical part of my brain and just turn on the part that watches teams and enjoys watching great Counter-Strike, it is fucking mad exciting though to have these 4 players on one team though. Like, I don't know how they will make it work, but just the what if of if they somehow can really get all 4 of these players to be anywhere close to this level, or like 3 at the level and 1 slightly worse, but somehow fit. Like, suddenly, think about all these years of Astralis. Even though they had Device, and then obviously before they had Config and Blame F, they were always sort of like half a team. Like, to me, they were always like at least 2 pieces away from being good. So I always felt like, oh, what a waste. It's almost like a retirement home for like the old players, isn't it? Like, they're never going to be relevant. Like, they haven't got the team yet, guys. But man, this, like, they've got all the best Danish players again. Like, the joke is only what Carrigan and like 1 or 2 other people aren't in this team right now. Like, actually, that is exciting in itself. So even if it ends up failing, I guess I am sort of like hooked even on the angle of like, I'll be watching. I'll watch the drama of it fill in that case, because actually, like, I've just sort of got into the hype of the 4 names now. Like, I'm pretty hyped for this. Like, I've been hyped for Astralis in years, guys. Like, this actually could be really exciting, I think. What do you think of this lineup, Thomas?
Nah, it's definitely a good lineup on paper, right? Like, it's a perfect lineup for him, but I think the roles are a bit strange. I don't think, well, someone's got to be doing like the shit role, right? And I can't see Blame doing it, so I'd imagine it's probably like Yabby or something. But I don't know, like, it's 2 different styles. Like, Astralis had their style, Heroic had their style. I don't know if there's much of a clash. Like, we practiced them a bit. You know, they are obviously, the firepower is immense on that team. But like, I think it's also, you can't judge CSGO to CS2 as a 1-to-1 anymore.
Oh, right.
Like, you can't look at people and be like, okay, in CSGO this guy was like mentor, like, but in CS2 he could be awful, you know, because
right.
like I think the actual meta of the game has like completely shifted. You're gonna see like way more of these random weird rounds where people can just get a load of kills.
Right.
Like, it's a much different. It's a very different game compared to CSGO, how it's being played as well, because you can't play the methodical sort of like thing. You got to take way more risk because like there's less rounds, you know. You damage your economy, you're pretty much buggered for like 3 rounds. So yeah, like I think Heroic style going into the Astralis style, I think they'll do great because they've got so much firepower. I don't know longevity wise, but we'll see. We'll have to see.
Just a remark on the meta shifting. I do feel like when I've been watching these qualifiers, the teams that are just super active, and I just feel like peaking is still is very strong right now. And so being the more active player, like anytime I see a person walking forward in a straight line, I'm like, you're just gonna lose. You're just gonna always lose. You can't. Yep. You're never gonna recover from those kinds of situations. And so I feel like if they're able to combine that kind of active style, because in a weird way, I've almost noticed that, say, like, you put yourself in a T-side situation, you get a single kill, and you try to hold and punish for a re-aggression. I actually feel like that's a weaker play than it used to be. I don't,
oh, it definitely is, yeah.
Yeah,
like holding the angle is so bugged now because like the player models, like when you're moving, is actually more accurate. Like,
yes, yeah. So it's like that's actually one thing where when I watch this Astralis team play, I feel like Blame F is maybe catching up in terms of the style you need to call in T-side, because actually so far at the closed qualifier where they're 2-1, what's really interesting about the stats of Astralis is that they have one of the highest opening kill rates on T side, but they're beneath 50% on round win percentage. They have 54%, they're getting the opening kill on T side, but they're only winning 44% of their T side rounds. And I feel like they haven't yet recognized that you need to actually just keep being active after you get a kill. And that's why I feel like it's a little bit random in some of these rounds, because it's almost like you should just build off of the momentum of getting a kill in a round and just keep going on T sides. It's like you just need to be like a little bit quicker. And I think Astralis are still trying to slow things down a little bit more, but definitely with CS2 and Peeker's advantage, it's not as effective, and definitely in online CS2, it's less effective. So I think they have a little bit of a ways to go, but I do agree with Thorin that like this roster on paper right now is incredibly strong, and if everything kind of clicks and they are able to fix a couple things and just, recognize maybe we need to actually play a little bit more up tempo, which has never really been BlameF's signature, I think they could actually still do a lot of damage, and they should be the Danish super team for all intents and purposes.
Right?
No, definitely.
Come on then, Thomas. If we're not good at doing the fucking praising people, you must be good at complaining. So what is your bad point? What you want to grumble about?
Oh, what did I say my bad point was? What did I say?
I mean, here's the thing. You picked the classic one for right now, which is you put major qualifiers or
the major
grassroots in the same.
qualifiers,
So what don't you like about, I mean, look, there's obviously been a lot of problems. What are the main things that stand out? If someone hasn't been following and they're just, waiting for it to finish, what's gone wrong with the qualifiers?
Now I'm going to dodge that one, and I'm going to go straight to the grassroots.
Whatever then, whatever, go on.
How has FACEIT stopped FPL-C? Like, a place where, anyone outside of the top 30 and stuff aren't able to play anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, and be supported by the actual like FACEIT company. Like, honestly, the amount of talents that came through FPL-C, ROPS, you've got loads of players. I think even ZywOo qualified.
I think ZywOo was originally, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, yeah. And you got loads of names. I can't really tell them now.
I mean, if I had to guess, I'm going to guess people like maybe Frozen, BMAS, like loads of people came through this. Like loads of the Eastern Europeans, loads of people. Yeah, loads of people.
And they've just sort of like cut the head off it, like destroyed like pretty much the tier 2, 3, 4, whatever scene for players to be able to get recognized better. Like even like Smooya has made his own one just to fill the void for now, but like I just don't think it's very good or like professional to do like damage like that to like the grassroots of the scene. Like I'd imagine in America it's probably very similar, which I hope like people need that opportunity to be able to show themselves. If they grind it and they get the opportunity to go to FPLV, people will have more eyes on them. That's what you've worked for, and now it's sort of like, nah, get fucked. Everyone just we're just gonna run with the people we've got now.
I didn't actually catch this one. I didn't see when they removed FPL-C, but that's a huge mistake in my eyes. I feel like that's just such an obvious place to. I mean, I was playing FPL-C actually when I was playing in like the MDL ECL level in North America, and it was a great way to just like get to know other players also in that space. You get to network in those games too. It's like if people like playing with you, well, you're gonna have more opportunities come postseason to actually get a tryout, or for people to just look at you and say maybe we should make a better team. So that actually, in a weird way, that actually just makes the teams also, that probably will actually make the culture of like swapping like roster swaps and stuff like that in tier 2 a little bit worse too, because they're just not going to be familiar with each other, and you're not going to end up funneling the people with the best communication and attitudes to the same teams, because FPL-C was a good proving ground to do that. So I wow, that's actually, I'm glad you bring that up, because I actually wasn't aware of that. I didn't see that news at any point. So yeah, that just sucks. That really just blows.
The thing is, you like when I used to play like FPL-C in like 2018, like I was playing with like the Gambit youngster guys.
Oh, right.
Like Axile. Well, Axile didn't really play, but it was like Nathany. Monacy was even playing in the hub back then. You had a lot of people who are like now all at the top, right? But like back then, they were just normal players like everyone else, Like it's pretty bizarre looking at it now, but yeah, I just feel like it's a waste,
I even feel like that's an area they've missed a trick, because the stupid thing is, like, people do know that detail we just said, but it's not like explicitly put. If I were them, I'd do like an ad that's like, look who came through, like FPL-C, like, look, like fucking ZywOo, man. It's like, essentially, I'd make it like sound like it's the path to pro, basically, because I definitely agree with Maui's point. What people won't get, that's kind of a nuance, is this. Yeah, sure, like, in theory, there are still tournaments, like, obviously, like CCT, where if you're some random guy from some random country on a random team, if you actually do well, maybe you can get some attention for yourself. But that's not the same, because pro players aren't going and just randomly watching VODs of the enemy. Like, they'll play against you and they might get a sense you're crazy. The difference is, if they play with you in FPL and then they die and you're on their team and they spectate you, you've sold yourself entirely, mate. They'll see if you're really good. They'll know if you can make comms. They'll see if you actually like got skills. People don't know. Some of the people he's talking about, yeah, look, obviously people like ZywOo and HeavyGod probably would make it to the top anyway. But it's actually, in my opinion, it's the people like the brokies that like needed the FPL, because that's where I'll guarantee you what happened is Nico must have just played a bunch of games with him and been like, this guy actually has a really good sort of game sense. Like, he's got good calls. Like, that's what sells you, mate. That's almost like having like a mini trial in the team if someone's a mega veteran. So I do think that's a big deal. And I'll just shade this in there finally. I also think it's a really bad fucking optics look if you're ESL. And here's why. If you've put all that money into and marketing time into the ESL Impact League for women, well, one of the famous things is, obviously, because if people don't know, there's a detail some casuals might not know, which is not every pro gets an FPL. You have to be like active. You actually have to be good, by the way, and play properly, etc. That's another reason you need like a lower division as well, because like Mauisnake isn't going to get to go straight into FPL. Well, in the same way, obviously not a lot of the female players have been able to get into FPL. It's really fucking like, it's like the best players in the world. Some of them, to get into FPL-C is their goal, mate. That's the place that they can go to try and prove themselves and level their skills up and actually have like good practice outside of the official. So if you're going to be ESL, you're going to brag about how woke you are and how you support women. Like, why did you take away the fucking area where they could play FPL then, you idiot? Like, you haven't sort of, that's not really consistent with your position, is it? So, I mean, look, I get that it might cost money and all that, but I feel like there has to surely be some way you can monetize this, because it is so key to the scene. I agree, actually. I think it's actually one of the best things about the scene. I don't think you'd have all these international teams if you didn't have that sort of an approach. Like, I think people would just stick with the people they know from the lands in their country, whereas this way, I actually feel like this is the reason why half the teams in Europe now are just international squads, because everyone knows the people. Some of the names we even mentioned here, people like Regali. Would anyone know this guy if there was no system? If you had to play in a Romanian team or whatever, like, you'd never have fucking heard of him, would you? Like, he'd be like half the people out in the scene. So yeah, I think that's a good one. Right, go on then, Maui. What is your bad point?
My bad point is I feel like you could look at a lot of the rosters that didn't make it through the open qualifiers, even the closed qualifiers. But the one I wanted to focus on first and foremost, it's kind of like two sides to this, actually. This thing is that it's just NRG not even making it to the RMR.
Yes.
We obviously had Daps as a guest on the most previous show, and I had hopes. I actually think I said 2 Daps on that show. I think the chance that you make it to the major was under 50%, but I thought they'd make it to the RMR. That's where it's a bit disappointing. And you think that the player caliber on the roster, if an org like NRG is putting it together, would have made it at least that far. And I watched practically every NRG game. Maybe I missed like one or something like that. But I watched the one they lost. I watched the one that booted them out, basically, where they lost to like Nero and Droid's team. Actually, Droid changed his name, so I shouldn't use that name, but whatever. I mean, I watched them lose to like a tier 2 North American mixed team, basically. So there was like this team, like, even though they're new and even though they're, still putting everything together, I really thought that making the RMR was a bare minimum. And when they had their objectives for this team, I am certain that they weren't just, people are pretty cautious with their objectives nowadays. They're not just shooting for the moon all the time. They probably weren't saying to themselves, let's get to the legend stage of the major, but they were definitely thinking, let's make it to the RMR. If we lose 2-3 to a good team that's better than us, we'll be okay with that. But losing in that fashion as they did is just well beneath the performance they should have had. And I guess it's more just like, the other, I mean, there's more I can say about it on the other side. Like, I do think that tier 2 NA is getting a little bit better, but I still think you look at that roster on paper with Daps, OC, Fang, Breeze, and Hex, and just be like, well, all these guys played at tier 1 relatively recently. Why couldn't they beat a team like the team that? Okay, I'm actually gonna find the team name right now. It's Rocket. They played Alpha, Nero, Elk, and Droid, and like. I mean, I'll just be honest, like, nobody here knows who those people are other than like big North American supporters. So yeah, it's just super disappointing for NRG.
Yeah, but you have to remember, like, people like Daps and stuff, they've gone from playing tier 1 teams that don't really change up their style. You know exactly what you're playing against. And then you have to play against a team which is just full random. You don't know anything really of them. Maybe like their positions, but like you're pretty much just hoping that your game will just work. You know, I think it's hard also. Like CS2, you can get punished really hard in this game. Like a couple of rounds don't go your way. Maybe some individuals make some like really massive mistakes, as in like they give their kill away instantly. Like the game can run away from you. I don't know. I haven't watched NRG at all really personally, so I can't really comment on them. Maybe Thorin has. I don't know.
It's fair enough. By the way, I thought you made a very apt point. I'm going to actually tag on to that, which is that's something I do feel like people misunderstand is because they're doing this obviously with the Bleed team that we'll maybe talk about a bit later. But like the idea that like, how could you ever fail against nobodies in an online qualifier? Like, first of all, is this your first day in Counter-Strike, you daft cunt? Online qualifiers that are open are notoriously like harder than a fucking LAN to navigate for even the best teams in the world because, like Thomas says, you have no info on some of the people you're playing. By the way, meanwhile, sometimes if you're a really famous team, they can just download your last demo and watch what you do. So they have info on you, you have no info on them. And then even worse, I'll give you an analogy. You know that famous analogy people use as a way to try and explain the concept of infinity? And it goes, if you took an infinite amount of monkeys and they had an infinite amount of typewriters and an infinite amount of time and they're just bashing keys, eventually just through random pattern over, you have infinite time here, eventually they will essentially type everything that could exist because of the pattern so that it will include the full works of Shakespeare. Now, the reason that always gets people's brain is they go, but how would it know what? And it's like, no, it's not about intention. It's about the idea of random. If you have a random pattern, it essentially contains all patterns because it contains every possible pattern if it's infinite, right? So the point I'm making is this. You've sort of done that with these open qualifiers. What you've done is you've taken hundreds of teams no pro team has ever seen play before. They're all just playing with seemingly random skill levels, experience levels, and essentially what that means is, think about it, if you have all these pro teams match up against these nobody teams, it's inevitable you're going to get upsets. You're going to get the nightmare wrong scenario. Like maybe Daps' team, for example, has played a bunch of scrims against tier 1 NA teams and they're actually getting the meta of how the game's played, and then they do play the team that just has a guy who just runs in like old JW with like no scopes you with the AWP around the corner for no reason. Like, what the fuck? Like, we're not planned for that. Like, remember, this is MR12, guys. You can lose a map really easy nowadays. Like, the part I can tell where people weren't from the MR12 era is, you guys don't realise, now it's gotten, even though the economy means you can play more of the rounds, MR12 is more like 3 good gun rounds, win or lose you the game. So suddenly randomised elements or like lock or just someone having a crazy playing style can just win you that like 2 key rounds that change it from you winning 13-11 to you losing 13-11. And then what happens is, because someone really on 2 rounds, 1 round, a flash didn't go off, another round a guy just got a 3k who's supposed to get a 2k, then a random fan who didn't watch the game goes, how could you ever lose to a team at that level? As though, by the way, like this was the major final and then you've just lost to like bums walking off the street. Like, this is the nature of online qualifiers, guys. Like, it's one of the reasons why I actually think people are always too harsh. And then also, just like the Bleed lineup, it's a brand new lineup as well. Like, even if I agree, like you look on paper, they should be better with those players, but they are brand new. Like, this is the first essential pressure moment. They haven't even like got any experience under their belt. Some of the names haven't even played together before. So I'm with you, Maui. Obviously, you hope at least they make the RMR, because then we at least like that's sort of real Counter-Strike at that point in time. It's a LAN. You can talk about Thrall, but it is a bomber because obviously, if people don't think about it, they're not one of the orgs that's necessarily going to be at all the big LANs next year. So kind of it puts back as well. When's the first time we're going to see this team? Like, what will be the first tournament they'll qualify to? So it is a little bit alarming. I'll give you that.
Yeah. The one thing I actually say on the flip side, because I don't want to just throw shade at like, tier 2 North American teams or anything like that, is that actually, when I look at like the closed qualifier of the teams that especially made it to the Americas RMR from North America, I actually think it's probably stronger than it's been for quite some time. When I look at the teams that are actually on top, like the 3-0 team's Complexity, and the other is actually Stanislaw's team that he's been IGLing, which is kind of hilarious that Stanislaw's team made it to the RMR and Daps' team didn't make it. I don't know if there's some kind of foreshadowing that's happening already, but then I look at the other ones that made it, and it's like Nouns, Liquid, M80. They're all the kind of teams that you would really have expected to do well in North America, except for NRG. That's like basically the one that's been missing. But every other team actually is pretty respectable, including the one that actually beat them. And just like, shout out to the guy that was really popped off for Rocket. I just want to say his name one time. Like Nero destroyed OC. Like he had a really insane series against him, and he killed. It was in the series in the BO3. He killed OC 20 times. OC killed him 3 times, and like he just had his number the whole time. Really good game for him, and I like just want to give credit there and not just do a sob story for NRG.
Okay. Right. I'll do my bad point. It's actually a pretty brief one because, by the way, today we just got a bit of a condensed show, but it's all good. So we'll just get this one done quickly and then we'll go on to the outplay section. So my bad point is basically something we've talked about before, but it really hit home recently because I've been listening to some of these discussions of like, you know, who should be where on the HLTV top 20 and who the best players are. And the player who is absolutely ELO held, like I'm telling you, it is impossible he could ever get higher if his team isn't better, is fucking KSCERATO on Furia. Like if you just look, because that team was so underwhelming with their placings last year, like if you just go and watch these games, guys, aside from like that one period where something happened with like a family member or and he was ill or whatever, aside from that, he's essentially doing like Nico back in old mouse sports shit where he just like mega carries the game. They lose really close, and then essentially because he then doesn't have more matches in that tournament to play because he's eliminated, we're sort of saying like, well, you didn't play enough matches, so you can't be one of the best players in the world. It's like what I hate essentially. It's not even just like staying in Furia. It's not even just like the rank. It's just I hate when anyone super talented is in that position. And I understand there's extenuating reasons, like maybe he believes in the org, maybe he likes some of his teammates, maybe he wants to keep playing with 40. You could have a million. By the way, I'll give you a good one. Maybe he just wants to only play with Brazilians. Maybe he doesn't feel comfortable speaking English and going to America or Europe like, oh, we're all telling him he should do as always like sports or whatever, you know. Maybe that's not his bag, but I just hate myself to see players that I think are way better. Like this guy, I think he wouldn't have to change anything about his game. He could have walked into like a FaZe Clan, a Team Liquid, Vitality, and he could just be winning trophies tomorrow for me. So I just always find that really cruel because there's so many players out there who are really good, who are in the top teams, and you're like, it's them that's not winning the tournament, or they have like Stown has to figure out how he's going to win a major or do something. This guy looks like he's ready to go, and he's just being held back, unfortunately. But it's a team game, so I hate it, mate. It kills me. Like without making it too ridiculous in a comparison. This is the same way I used to feel, Thomas, with like fucking Harry Kane being on Spurs. Like they were obviously a way better team prospectively than fucking this team. Definitely. But this guy used to be a beast. He would be banging in like 30 goals and then everyone would go, where's his trophies done? I'd be like, what's he supposed to do? Score 40? Like, you know, like I hate when people are in that scenario, mate. It just kills me inside. Like this guy, I think this guy's the tits, mate. I think he's really good.
Oh, no, definitely. KSCERATO's the GOAT, right, of Brazil. I don't know. Obviously, something's not been working correctly since they brought in like Fallen and stuff. I don't know. Maybe it was a clash of style. You know, Furia had their own unique style, which they nurtured and built together with like Art, Yuri, and stuff.
Definitely could be overrated as fuck. Oh, sorry, did I say it out loud? Oh, my bad. Yeah, keep going. Just keep going.
Nah, but like I'm telling you, like I think KSCERATO. He definitely just wants to play in like probably the Brazilian team, right?
I think, yeah.
Yeah, like he doesn't care. Like he can join a top team no matter what.
Yes.
But like I think he's, you know, inside he just wants to play with the Brazilians, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No. By the way, I will just throw this out there. You guys are not allowed as fans to constantly tell me like, hey, just leave Tapson alone. Maybe he just wants to play in a German team. And then go, KSCERATO is an imbecile who should leave. It's the same scenario. And by the way, the joke is at least Furia like once had a chance to win the major. Like when the fuck did big? Like that's an even more egregious one, guys. Like if Tapson's allowed to stay, then KSCERATO's allowed to stay. I'm just sad about the scenario, like for what could have been, you know. That's all I'm sad about.
Yeah, I mean, just on the ranking alone, there's no universe where if I'm looking at the top 20 and I'm saying, yeah, Cadian better player than KSCERATO.
I know, come on.
Just no world where that's actually true. And yeah, that's just kind of the thing with the HLTV top 20, which I actually think for the most part is it's like kind of like I would almost tier the list, and I'd kind of agree with the tiers that they put people in for the most part, except for KSCERATO, except for Frozen. There was, you know, really light exceptions here and there, but in terms of where things ended up in this one, I mostly get it, except for, you know, these few cases. And I you know, because the list is flawed about like this is their achievement for the year and how well they were, how good they were for that year as like finishing in tournaments and everything like that. But it's like it's a team game, and so you don't always have any kind of bearing on that, and that's kind of like. You are ELO hell is a good way to put it. You know, that's just kind of where KSCERATO's found himself. teams not performing nearly to the standard. And if they didn't actually even win that Elisa event, I actually wonder, would they even put him on the top 20 at all? Because then he'd have no trophies at all. But it's like, he wasn't playing any worse as an individual, just that the team didn't really get up to speed until that one.
No, as if people don't know, one of the things I know they changed about that ranking is instead of sort of just waiting till the end of the year to do it, that's one of the reasons why during each event, they don't just do MVP, they do that thing called EVP, which is the idea that like, it is people like this, like at least you had a pop-off event. And what they do is it makes it very quick as far as I know at the end of the year to sort of call it, like this guy had 8 EVPs and this guy had 4 or whatever. And then you're not just looking at the total rating, you're sort of shading that into it to try and like compare or something. So there is some of that going on. All I'll say with that is though, that is some sort of like meme that maybe Maui might know of, some like fucking word cell versus shape rotator meme where it's like, why are you just doing a list where it's like, here's how I look at some abstraction numbers that represent something and I rank those. It's like, rank the player, you daft cunt. Watch them play and then rank who's better. But I will say, this is obviously the main consideration. Like you say, there are outliers. Like for example, if it turns out KSCERATO played like a fifth of the maps as someone above him, it is hard to put him above even if he's better. That's what makes those as tricky. So, okay, let's move on to the ugly section. So, Thomas, I hit that earlier, but what is your ugly point?
Ah, man, how brutal maybe the open qualifiers were. Definitely. Watching the open qualifiers, people crashing, not having enough slots, like teams not being able to check in because there's too many like teams. I don't know, like the entire tournament just seemed a bit like of a shambles to me, and the amount of cheaters in comparison to like Paris was like crazy when you think about it, because a lot of teams were cheating.
By the way, that was the worst thing, you know, no joke, was that even though you mean obviously in actual competitive level, like people in a qualifier cheating, because it just made all those plebs like, yeah, it's the same as all my matchmaking games. It's bloody cheaters. Everyone's like, that's not what they're talking about. They weren't talking about a guy like with the old fucking hack where like that girder sticking out his body, like, you know, through a wall, you idiot. Like obviously like it's like real Counter-Strike. It just looks dodgy, doesn't it? Yeah, of course. But there were definitely a lot of like fucking mad sus ones from some of those clips, mate. Like I saw one of them, I won't name names, Thomas, because obviously who knows, maybe the person's innocent. But I saw one of those ones where like if you can just see the radar, it looks like they just have a wall hack and they're just perfectly like, you know, flanking behind people in a way where it's like, all right, bro, you're like Billy Big Balls, nobody 18790, and you've like got the fucking game sense of like ZywOo. I don't think so somehow, you know. There was some of those I saw.
I know, I was watching Olof's stream, man, and he was watching there was a bunch of Swedish guys playing, and there was a guy called Pike, and he was just full rushing T-Apps. Like, I mean, like, he was playing Inferno in apps. He's CT side. He's just full running every single round, second mid, like, not even caring. And then, like, you know, obviously somebody told him, like, Olof's watching only you. And so he had to chill out a bit, you know, but...
Even better, okay. No, he's acting. Okay. Well, play cool, mate. Play cool.
Like, just chill out. Oh, he's never done this before. He's actually holding apps. Oh. But, yeah, I don't know. The qualifier could have definitely been sorted much better. I think the game is in a bad state, as in, like, so I saw a lot of people crashing. Like,
literally, like in the middle of the round, it just crashes out.
Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah, people will just crash.
Okay.
The game will crash. The anti-cheat maybe will lag out. I don't know. But, like, I'm not going to lie, it shouldn't be a thing in 2024. I understand if it was, like, a thing, you know, when CSGO was just out. The technology we have now in comparison to then, like...
So he says that, like, we went from steam engines to, like, fucking hovercrafts or something.
It feels like that, though, you know? Like, if you compare it to, like, today, like, the servers should be, like, top quality. I don't know, the whole game's just a bit of a mess, to be honest, in my opinion.
Okay. What do you think?
The crashing was really, really lame, because I do remember some of the rounds that some of the teams would win, which were so impactful, was just one guy disconnects. Well, the bomb sighting. I forgot what teams it was, but I remember there was this team that was on practically like an eco round, and they were going B on Mirage, and then the B anchor for the other team disconnected, and it was like, well, now they just got a bomb plant and stole a round too. That just should have never happened, and it just kind of changed the whole outlook of the next 3 rounds, and just shit like that. And it was because like it was like the Acros anti-cheat was just giving, I don't know if it was giving false negatives or it wasn't connecting to people's thing, but that was the message that was in chat. It was like, Acros disconnected the person.
Yeah.
Like, what is this anti-cheat doing? Like, I'm pretty, like, these were 2 legit teams. there's a chance, you know, for some reason that person turned it off, but I would probably give them the benefit of the doubt, given I've seen these people play in tier 1 competition. So yeah, that anti-cheat it still is kind of wacky. And yeah, it's unfortunate that it feels like FACEIT right now has such a stranglehold on putting together a good qualifier tournament, because I imagine that PGL probably didn't want to enlist their services because it probably just had an exorbitant fee, whereas Challenger mode was probably a little bit more just financially viable for them. And, you know, PGL is all about just making things profitable for themselves. They see this as a business, and that makes sense. Obviously, you should. Yeah. And so you think about your bottom line. If you're going to have to pay 7 times the amount to use FACEIT services, and you think you can get by on Challenger mode, yeah, sure, you'll just weather the storm of the first few days of people complaining like crazy, and they're rightfully complaining. But if you get out on the other side and you have the highest viewed grand finals in CS history, it's not really much of a PR nightmare, is it?
But Acros was used for Paris.
Oh,
you know?
Okay,
so
then.
Like during the qualifiers, like there's nowhere near as many problems, but it was also on CSGO, you know, like they've stabilized servers. Like when you think about it, CSGO was running very smooth by the end of it. And I think it was just what was happening. But I don't know. I think CS2 has a big thing to play with, because I think even on FACEIT, I do think if you were to run a tournament on it and you had a lot more players running on the servers, maybe it would like crash out a bit the same, but you just don't know, you know? Like CS2 is just so random now, with like, you can just crash randomly for no reason at all.
Okay. Right. I'll just say one brief thing, which is all I have to say is this, because people will have seen a certain fat-headed individual who, let's just say in a cartoon, only in a cartoon, I would say, injected a lot of synthol. So there you go. I'll put that one out. Only Maui gets that one, but it's straight fire, if you know. Basically, this individual made one of his like insightful remarks on the community. That was about this qualifier, where he was like, "Why are we letting people get manually banned?" So again, another person who's on his second day in Counter-Strike. Spoiler: every qualifier ever, you fucking idiot. If it's obvious the person is hacking, they get manually banned. You don't think they just go, "Well, he's hacking his tits off," and it's obvious he's just wall hacking. But the anti-cheat didn't catch him, so I guess welcome to the major, Billy Big Balls. No, you fucking instantly manually banned them, and always have in all of history. And then finally, he's so stupid, he used the example of people like we wouldn't have like Rops and ZywOo. We do have Rops and ZywOo, and we already did those bans, you fucking cretin. Your actual points make an argument against what you were saying. And also, spoiler, those people should have been potentially accused by the eye test of cheating. Do you know why? They're some of the most cracked out players in the history of Counter-Strike, you moron. One of them, ZywOo, literally, you idiot. Of course he looks like he's cheating. He is better than everyone else. Like, some people can't win, mate. Like, the problem in the modern day is essentially, and I'm one to say it, but I'm going to fucking say it, just because you can send tweet doesn't mean you always should send tweet. And again, I say that from hard fought and lost experience, Maui. So we go. I think I made a good point there. I think I made quite a succinct point about how bad the cheating problem can be and how we have to solve it. Right, let's go on then. We've obviously got one last section, boys. So Maui, hit me with it, because yours is a pretty good one. What was your ugly point?
Mine is that so kassad has been doing a great job for Bleed, despite their results, to just continue to be transparent. He's talked a little bit about roster discussions.
The joke being there, Maui. Whoa, it's not hot take point made. Like, kassad's been doing a great job in Bleed. Like, whoa, come on.
No. He's not obviously the result, barring the results of the team. In terms of what he's providing the scene in terms of transparency, I'm a big fan of that. Yeah, exactly. He's talking about how he talked to players. He's telling leakers or whatever, no, this isn't what happened or whatever. And I have no reason to believe like he's lying about any of this stuff. And he even he went as far to release the bootcamp schedule that his team had. And it's cool to see these kinds of things, because it's cool to get a little bit of insight into how teams are preparing for one of the biggest qualifiers of the season, probably the biggest qualifier of the season. And then he goes and does this. And what's ugly, the ugly point is KRL's reaction to how he released that, and KRL saying terrible schedule with almost no break for the players between qualifiers. It's great to see the teams work hard, but players also need rest. Dude, this is them jumpstarting themselves to try to be competitive, KRL. Like, and if we've learned anything from the past 7 majors, it's that there's always going to be 1 to 3 random teams that make it into the playoffs of a major because they have on all of their players 120 hours in the past 2 weeks. Okay. And I know that grind seems unsustainable. Well, it is, but it goes so far for you as a team that people have foregone little instances of grinding hard. And it's like, you can apply this to anything in life, whether you're like, a lawyer, whether you work in finance, whether you are just studying for exams. Like, you're going to work harder than your body probably wants you to for short durations so that you can maximize the amount you learn, that maximize your growth, that maximize everything you're doing. And it's just kind of like, this comes off from a point where it's like, I don't know. I think KRL is almost like ad hominem attacking Kassad here, where I'm just like, are you oblivious to the fact that practically every team does this? It's like you probably look at Vitality and the ramp up they had for Rio, the ramp up they had for the Paris Major. It probably looked a lot like this. And for some reason, you just want to call out Kassad, and I just feel like it's a totally bad look. And the ugly point is, one, KRL making this like attack on Kassad, where it's like, this is totally reasonable for a big qualifier, and 2, it's like also it's like dismissive or dissuading people from the future from being transparent, which is what this scene needs more of. It needs more people like Kassad showing what's going on behind the scenes, because then we have a much better picture as fans, analysts, pundits, whatever, to say like, here's what we know and these are the inferences we can make about it.
They're also at bootcamp as well. You have to remember that.
Yes.
Like, they're personally looking at their schedule, looking at the time they had until the qualifiers. Like, you got to be an idiot to not do a schedule like that. Like, you have to like just pound it out before like jumping into the thick. Like, you have to go in with something. Like, a brand new team, you just got your 5th, like, I don't know, a couple of like 5 days before the qualifier. You have to just graft it out. You're all at boot camp. You're meeting probably each other for the first time, or like at least talking to each other for the first time. Like, I don't think that is an issue like anyone should be like looking at. Like, they have to grind, and to be honest, I wouldn't expect them to stop grinding until probably the end of the month, to be honest. Like, honestly,
Yes.
they need to get a lot of work down. Like, my team, we came back early because we have a lot of like stuff to get down for the RMR, and we could have took a break until the 15th, like, phase and stuff, but like, why we can't? We literally need the time to like do it. Like, Bleed didn't have the time, so they did what was best and they grafted it. I don't know, like, they're all at boot camp. They're not really going to be doing anything else in the evening apart from maybe playing a bit more. Like, let's be honest, I don't really see the point of like flaming the schedule, to be honest.
I mean, to me,
I don't really see it.
I think genuinely this was just stupid, because the point here, like you're pointing out, is this wasn't like the every week schedule that they're going to do for 51 weeks of the year and then have 1 week off.
Yeah.
Like some sort of fucking mad drill sergeant. Like, as we're saying, it's a brand new lineup, by the way, from an org that isn't a traditional Counter-Strike org, who's trying to get into the RMR to then hopefully parlay into the major, which means millions of dollars in sticker money. Like, this is essentially the number one priority if you are this org, is we must get through this qualifier. And so as a result, what they've done is they've said, we haven't got much time. It's like being in a software company, right? We've all got to do the crunch. We've got to get the programming done by this particular date. So here's the point. Flip it the other way. Imagine they just took it easy and then had the same result. First of all, you'd all go fucking lazy team. And then secondly, you'd think, what a moron. You didn't prioritize the major. Like, that's the most important tournament you could possibly have. So yeah, I think it's ridiculous. And then what I'll say is this. I think the real reason why this comment was made is more to do with KRL than it is to do with Bleed. I think what happened was, because KRL is like in that influencer sphere, that streamer sphere where you bait drama all the time, I think he saw that this was like essentially free clout. Everyone in the community that wants Kassad to fail if they're a Huxley fan, or they just think he's shit as an analyst, or whatever angle they all use now. And so they're all waiting for someone big to come and donk on him. And so you've come out and you're the one who sort of was even though you've actually picked him up mad reasonable, Kassad posted, you idiot. He posts a million incendiary things. You don't respond to those. And instead you come and than post this, you cretin? Why not post when he like implies Nico should just like get everything in the universe, you idiot? Wouldn't that be a good point? But here's the bigger problem, and here's what's sad. I'm actually going to own this completely. Do you know what? I actually am glad KRL is in the scene, because if people don't know, one, he actually isn't just an influencer, guys. He actually was like a legendary source captain, and he was a guy who was like an in-game leader of people like Sharks and some mega players, and was like one of like he was in very games that people don't know. He was like one of the big guys. So like I will give him credit. In source, suppose he was like a top player and figure, and he knows a lot about the scene. But here's what I'll say, and here's the punchline, is he's the first person ever in esports that made me feel like what it must be like to be someone else observing me and my Twitter. Because it's not like everything he says is wrong and he doesn't have a point, he doesn't know the game. He does. He has some points sometimes. He does know the game. He actually does know all these players. He probably does know loads of behind the scenes info. It's just that even if he's right, you just go, God, what an arsehole though. So, you know, just for a moment, it's like I got that lucidity. It's like I just, you know, it's like that moment when the nightclub where the lights come up at the end and I realised who I was stood like, fuck, is that what it's like when I do my tweet? Fucking hell. And then luckily though, like the classic, whatever that one, like Gillison fucking technique, Maui, I did do that thing where when I say that, I then do take a breath. Think about ZywOo getting top one again, though. Send tweet. Like, don't worry. It does. Listen, just because you're aware of something, guys, doesn't mean it fundamentally changes. Like, I just caught a glance in a window. I just won't look there again. I won't look and reflect on that. Right. The last thing, the last point, which we'll make this a quick one, is, because I thought it's mainly actually just for Thomas, but I'll set him up quickly. Basically, the point goes like this. I won't say the name of the person because I'm actually intentionally not going to give them any credit for this. But one thing I find really sad as a content creator is you'll get people who come along and when they, you know, they used to just be a fan, or maybe they were like on the outskirts of the content creation scene. And then what happens is they get like later on, after years in the industry, they climb a little bit. They start doing maybe some good content or podcasts, or they come and do written articles. And basically, I find this stuff eventually. It comes my way through the scene. And I go, this is pretty good, actually. And then I go to Twitter and I think I might like follow this person or retweet the article. And what I do is, I've had to learn this, sadly, guys. I do the old advanced Twitter search on their name and my name. And boom, what do you know? All insults from years ago where when they were just a fan, they just said all sorts of, sometimes my degree just shit like I shouldn't work the major, I'm a piece of shit, I'm a liar, no integrity. And the reason I bring this up is this, because one, we've joked in the past, but Maui almost got caught in that net. But here's what people don't get. When you then 3 years from now mature and go, sorry, like, well, I'm still me, aren't I? Like, I didn't have 3 massive years of shit. So to me, you're still just the arsehole who was a rude to me. And the reason I thought I'd bring this up, Thomas, is I actually do think you could probably make a point about this because, man, what I'm essentially saying is, it's not that you can't be a fan, but if you're going to be a fan, don't ever then plan on being a pro. And I'd say the same thing to pro players. If you just play pugs at the moment and you want to talk mad shit to anyone known that you play, don't ever plan on being a pro player then, mate, because you don't know, you are sowing the seeds of your downfall. Like, you will get to a point where you'll get good, maybe you're in FPL-C, and then someone will go, he's a dickhead, that guy, yeah, he used to fucking piss us off and like leave this, or he would shit talk. People don't know how much impact that can have. Like I'm saying here, this content creator doesn't know years down the line, this might fuck him completely. Maybe he'd be the third box here instead of Thomas on next week's episode, but now he never will be because he was too rude. And guess what? Just going, sorry, 4 years after that ain't enough if I recognise the name. So what would you say, Thomas? Because I've always felt like this is a big problem. Up-and-coming players have, they just talk so much shit before they're established.
Yeah, it's a spicy scene nowadays, I think. Yeah, to be honest, I don't believe it will prevent anything. I believe that people can change.
Okay.
I don't believe that you should judge somebody off their past entirely. Obviously, it's
what's the fun in
the
that?
Context of it, right?
Go on,
yeah, but it's down to the context, right? And how useful, for example, if there was a player and let's say he was a perfect fit, you could utilize him. But like he might have said some bad stuff back in the past, like you can do workarounds. If he's changed and actually like is sorry for his mistake, I don't see.
That's key though. If they give remorse,
him,
is a big deal, right? If they're actually remorseful, is a big deal, yeah.
Yeah, but like you can't anchor someone on like something they've done 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Just watch me. Just watch me.
Yeah, yeah, you can have that attitude, but like if they have like genuinely changed, like I think it's actually like you're becoming the bad person for holding the anchor then. Like you can't just you know, you can't really do that. In my opinion anyways. I think you've always got to look on the brighter side. You know, sometimes.
By the way, he mainly obviously means in the game as a pro, but I do think it's funny because we have no time left. So basically, he has to shrek me at the end there, and he guys basically said I'm wrong and I'm the arsehole. So there we go. All right, I'll lose then. I'll lose again.
Spun it around,
that's it.
Back
You're blocked.
you.
I'm going to block you straight after this. It's all good, Thomas. You're blocked, so it's all good.
Oh,
it's okay.
Fuck.